August 10th, 2005, the highway shooter, aka the Ohio Sniper, 29-year-old Charles A. McCoy Jr., dropped his defense of insanity and pleaded guilty to manslaughter and 10 other charges in a series of shootings that occurred in 2003 and 2004. Judge Charles Schneider sentenced McCoy to 27 years in prison. The plea ensured that Charles would avoid a second trial following a previous mistrial due to a hung jury. Scrapping his insanity plea would keep him from facing the death penalty. All in all, he committed 23 shootings, which left one woman dead. On May 10th, a 37-year-old woman ran out of gas at 4 a.m. in the westbound lanes of I-270 east of I-71. After leaving to look for help, she returned to discover her car's windshield shot out and the hood damaged. August 31st, a 41-year-old woman from Akron finds a bullet hole in the back of her horse trailer hours after driving eastbound on the I-270. October 10th, a female commuting north on US 23 north of I-270 finds her tire shot after taking it for repairs. October 11th, noontime, a 36-year-old male driving along I-270 reports a bullet striking the rear side panel of his Nissan Sentra, which exited through the vehicle's rear window, smashing it. October 19th, 56-year-old truck driver William Briggs of Hilliard turned north onto westbound I-270 off of US 23 at 11:30 p.m. when, after driving for about a mile, had his driver's side window shattered by a bullet. November 11th, roughly 3/4 of a mile from the freeway at 1:35 a.m., a bullet breaks a window at Hamilton Central Elementary in Obetz. November 15th, a civilian notices a bullet hole in a van parked at a used car lot on US 23, just over a mile north of I-270. November 17th, eastbound on I-270 at 11 a.m., between Parsons Avenue and US 23, a United Parcel Service truck driver discovers a bullet hole in the door behind the driver's seat. November 18th, a woman driving a Ford Explorer on US 23 at 9:30 p.m. north of Rathmel Road has her driver's side door struck with a bullet. November 21st, a 53-year-old retired prison guard reports a bullet shot into his minivan at 7:40 p.m. on US 23 south of Rathmel, 1.5 miles from I-270. November 25th, 10 a.m. on I-270 near I-71, a bullet tears through the driver's side door of Mary Cox's Pontiac Grand Am, killing her passenger, Gail Nisley, 62, of Washington Courthouse. 4 hours later, near the same area, a GMC Jimmy, driven by a 26-year-old male from Orient, south of Columbus, is struck near the left rear fender of his vehicle. Between 1 p.m. and 3:30 p.m., a Coca-Cola tractor-trailer driver reports a bullet hole in the trailer's rear door after making multiple deliveries on I-270. November 30th, Phyllis Kramer, driving along I-270 eastbound between I-71 and US 23, hears a thud and discovers a bullet hole after arriving home. November 30th through to December 1st, between 11 p.m. November 30th and 3:30 p.m. December 1st, Emma Fader reports that someone shot the front of her house at 1798 Lyle Avenue near I-270. She discovered a bullet hole in her living room floor. December 15th, 12:30 a.m., 901 Brown Road, 2 miles north of I-270, 48-year-old Ronald Edwards hears 3 gunshots. A bullet is discovered in the home's bathtub, while 2 other bullet holes are located in the front of the house. December 15th through to the 17th, 4:20 p.m., a Southwestern City school bus was shot on Brown Road near Randsburg Avenue. December 17th, a second Southwestern bus was hit by gunfire at 7 a.m. January 11th, 2:15 a.m., while driving a stretch of I-70, a man was assailed when a bullet hit the hood of his car, leaving bullet fragments in the hood and cracking the vehicle's windshield. January 22nd, 12:45 a.m. on I-71, 30-year-old Michael Thomas had his windshield shot at and cracked by a bullet. Thomas stated that he saw a person standing in the shadows in front of a parked car on an overpass nearby. February 3rd, a bullet ripped through the windshield of a van at 2:10 p.m. while driving on I-71, roughly 15 miles south of I-270. A bullet fragment taken from the dashboard was a ballistic match. February 8th, a Mercedes and a van were shot within a mile apart from overpasses on Interstate 71 in Jeffersonville, about 40 miles south of Columbus. The Mercedes driver, Douglas Berry, described the shooter as a middle-aged white male with a medium build. A different motorist, Cheryl Schreier, described seeing a black sports car on an overpass when the shootings occurred around 11:30 a.m. The van shooting is the only one without a bullet or casing as evidence. February 14th, a sport utility vehicle driven by Tony Hall is shot from an overpass on I-70 in Licking County, and witnesses in at least 2 other cars see the gunman. Investigators would later link recovered bullets to a 9mm handgun that McCoy had hidden under his bed. After receiving his sentence, McCoy, with tears in his eyes, read an apology to the families of victim Gail Knisley and survivor Mary Cox. First of all, I would like to say I'm sorry to the Knisley family and for the loss I caused them, McCoy stated. I'm sorry to Mrs. Cox. When I heard that 911 tape, I felt the pain they suffered. Defense attorney Drew Haney would have to read the remainder of McCoy's apology as McCoy was crying and unable to do it himself. I'm sorry to the others and their families who I shot at and almost hit. I would also like to apologize to the community for the fear that I caused during this time. I wish I could take back what happened. I can't, and I'm sorry for causing the Knisley family to lose a wife, mother, and friend. I hope in the future people can learn from my illness and from my mistake of fighting treatment to hopefully prevent this tragedy from happening. McCoy would later state in an interview regarding his sentence, "It's pretty scary. I guess it's the best alternative I have. From my attorneys, I've learned that because of my actions, it'd be kind of like if I went to a mental hospital, I'd have to stay there for either a really long time or I wouldn't get out at all for fear that something like this may happen again." Ronnie Knisley, husband to victim Gail Knisley, had this to say. Just ask yourself, if it was your mother, father, daughter, husband, or son, would you be happy with what happened? You just have to accept it and move on. Mary Cox, Gail Knisley's best friend, would say, I did feel like he was trying to think of everything he's done to everybody. I lost my best friend, and I just can't forget her. She was everything to me. The shootings took place over a 5-month period between 2003 and 2004. The defense, prosecution, and Judge Schneider all feel that McCoy suffered from schizophrenia. I hope that people can understand that Charles is a young man that did not sign up to have this illness, said McCoy's defense lawyer, Drew Haney. It's something you don't pick. It picks you. Charles McCoy would admit firing the shots in 2003 and 2004 to quiet mocking voices in his head that called him a wimp. He would also throw wood and bags of concrete mix off highway overpasses. He had stopped taking his medication before the shootings began. Toward the end of the shootings, he believed firing from overpasses would make news coverage of Michael Jackson stop. We hate what you did to my mother and to all of us, said Brent Knisley, son of Gail Knisley. I could stand here for hours listing all the things you did to my father, my wife, my brother, all of her friends, and especially my 2 children. But you couldn't possibly understand because you didn't know her. Gail Knisley was being driven by friend Mary Cox to a doctor's appointment before a day of shopping. Psychiatrists for both sides agreed that McCoy had severe delusions that TV programs and commercials were speaking directly to him and mocking him, but the prosecution's psychiatrist felt McCoy showed he knew his actions were wrong by the steps he took to avoid capture, such as moving the shootings to other counties when publicity focused on I-270. When McCoy's father called him to say police wanted to test his guns, McCoy gave permission and watched from a distance as his dad gave his firearms over to authorities. He then drove 36 hours straight to Las Vegas. He didn't change his license plates, however. While the number was being broadcast nationwide and registered under his own name at a motel, he was captured there after a few days on March 17, 2004. Before arresting McCoy, James Gearhart was investigated and later dismissed by police as a suspect. McCoy is currently serving a 27-year sentence at the Allen Correctional Institute. McCoy, a paranoid schizophrenic, and his crimes were reminiscent of another paranoid schizophrenic named Jeffrey Ehrenberg, who shot and killed sportscaster and former NHL player Brian Smith in Ottawa, Ontario on August 1, 1995. Ehrenberg, who believed radio stations were stealing his thoughts, gunned down his victim in an effort to bring attention to the voices in his head. In 1976, custodian Edward Charles Alloway, also a paranoid schizophrenic, murdered 7 people with a .22 caliber semi-automatic rifle at California State University in Fullerton, California. Jared Lee Laffner, who committed the January 8, 2011 Tucson shootings, in which he shot and severely injured U.S. Representative Gabby Giffords and killed 6 people, including Chief U.S. District Court Judge John Roll, Gabe Zimmerman, one of Giffords' staff, and a 9-year-old girl, Christina Taylor Green, as well as injuring 13 others, was also a diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. John Hinckley Jr., who attempted to assassinate then-President Ronald Reagan, was also said to have suffered from major depressive disorder and from schizophrenia, an attack that wounded and nearly killed the president. He also wounded police officer Thomas Delahanty and Secret Service agent Tim McCarthy, while critically wounding press secretary James Brady, who was left permanently disabled. Infamous serial killer David Berkowitz, better known as the Son of Sam, whose crimes were also all shootings, was also diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. By the end of his rampage, 6 would be killed and 9 wounded by Berkowitz's .44 special caliber Bulldog revolver. Of course, only a small percentage of people diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia actually commit these types of crimes, but one has to wonder, what is the link between paranoid schizophrenics who commit murder and the propensity for those killers to carry it out by means of shooting one or more strangers, seemingly as some sort of strategy to silence the voices, tormenting them in their minds? Random sniper-style or assassination-like shootings that, unlike other forms of murder, stabbings, blunt force trauma, strangulation, allows for much more distance between the victim and the assailant. It can be argued that there may be a sexual component to shooting someone, and many of these assailants seem to revel in the act during and after killing, but there is still a high degree of disassociation being psychologically implemented by the schizophrenic shooter. A hard-working athlete in high school, McCoy would be diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia at age 21 after his parents found him looking for cameras in the walls of their home. He could never hold down a job after this, living with his mother after his parents divorced a few years later. McCoy would go on in detail during an interview that he wasn't paying attention to any of the media coverage and that he thought he was the only person alive. If I was the only person living, I didn't think anyone would be hurt or anything like that. McCoy said, adding, "I was thinking this is what people wanted me to do." McCoy also blamed himself for his parents' divorce and claims the voices he was hearing began to worsen at this point. Between May and August of 2003, McCoy and his brother-in-law were building a deck. A piece of wood struck McCoy in the head. He blamed the voices and threw the wood from a freeway overpass, and the voices settled down. He would continue throwing lumber and cement until he ran out of these items and eventually switched to shooting. McCoy preferred firing from within his vehicle, seated, pointing the gun out of the window of his green Chevrolet Astro. Former Franklin County Sheriff's Deputy Chief Steve Martin led the sniper task force. Martin says that investigators first thought the shooting that killed Knisley was an isolated incident. "Until we got into it, we had no knowledge there had been that many shots fired," Martin stated. He also noticed that police reports from the South Columbus area revealed a number of shootings that matched similarities with Knisely's death. We knew we had a problem, and a really serious problem, added Martin. The task force used every available resource at the time, including technology called ShotSpotter, which can pinpoint the location of a gunshot to within 20 feet using sensors which are trained to listen to specific frequencies of gunfire. Months passed with no leads until finally authorities received tip number 5444. It said, "Go speak to Charles McCoy Sr." There's been some discussion in the family that son Charles Jr. may have some involvement in the shootings, and he's recently turned over his handgun to his father. The task force had already tested more than 100 weapons during the investigation. However, ballistics tests fired from McCoy's 9mm Beretta matched the same markings from the bullet that killed Gail Knisely 6 months before. FBI agent Harry Trombatas was in Martin's office the morning the call came in. The enormity of that statement, it was like getting a kick in the stomach, recalled Trombatas. We've been looking for somebody, and all of a sudden we had a face to put with who did this. After receiving another tip from civilian Conrad Mulsum, who spotted McCoy at the Stardust Sportsbook Lounge in Las Vegas, police were finally able to arrest the infamous Ohio sniper. Mulsum later told reporters, "I had seen his face and I remembered from earlier in the morning the USA Today, and I knew it was him." Trombatas remembered getting a call from an agent in the FBI field office in Las Vegas. He goes, "Hey Trom, we're sitting on your sniper, dude. We're setting up on his hotel room and waiting for him to come back to his hotel room." Perhaps most unsettling, had McCoy not been apprehended, he planned on shooting from Las Vegas all the way back to Columbus. He had a couple boxes of ammunition and another .92 Beretta with him. He told police he planned to shoot all the way back. Although Steve Martin led the sniper task force, he insists it was a team effort, including FBI agent Harry Trombatas and Mark Hardy, who performed the ballistics tests. Martin also noted how well the task force worked together, with more than a dozen police agencies from the local, state, and federal level acting as one voice. "I think all of us that worked this thing knew that at some point in time that we were going to bring this to some resolution," said Martin. "We'd hoped sooner than later." Is the mentally ill sniper murderer a thing of the past? Has this type of crime been replaced by shootings perpetrated by extremists and terrorists? One glance at the unsolved Phoenix freeway shootings that occurred in 2015 might suggest no. Trombatas would say of sniper personalities, "These sniper-type people have a tendency to commit their crimes from a distance. They're not the kind that will get in your face." Thank you for watching this presentation of the Ohio highway sniper attacks, and remember, the mind is a place of its own. Be careful not to get trapped.